Murals are art for the people. Ever since men and women first painted on the walls of caves, and then in the temples and pyramids of ancient Egypt, and then Greece, and then Rome, murals tell the story of a community. And Peter Matthias's mural in Mahone Bay does that for Mahone Bay. The Mahone Bay mural starts, as all murals should, with a parade. Band was an institution in Mahone Bay. Ever since the 1880s, when it was formed, the Mahone Bay Brass Band was there for parades, for boat launches, for anything that was needed celebration. The mural has the band strutting along Main Street. And for every occasion after that, even today, bands are a part of parades in Mahone Bay. Above the band is a harmony tree. And in the harmony tree, blackbirds are singing. And there's an extraordinary picture of Obed Ham. He was a character of Mahone Bay. He built luxury yachts for the very rich. He made violins and played them. He composed music, he wrote poetry. He was a master craftsman, a dreamer. He was part of a generation that made Mahone Bay special and unique. And one of those special and unique occasions is right next to the harmony tree. Mahone Bay, of course, is famous for its wooden boat building. Wooden boats from Mahone Bay cross the world, from as far as China and down to Cuba. And the fame and fortune of Mahone Bay was based on its wooden boat building and the wealth that came from construction, from trading, and from fishing. In the spring of 1920, the mural records an extraordinary situation. A huge diesel engine had arrived at the railway station, and it was too heavy for any of the local trucks. So there we have a team of oxen dragging the diesel engine into McLean's shipyard. Head of oxen was Freeman Tom Mader. Crowds came out to watch it, and there's a boy with a hoop caught in the mural, and he really was there in the old photo. So here we have the brand new, the big diesel engine, being dragged by the old oxen and a sled and feeding the runners under the sled. It was for a boat called the Côte Nord, and Tom Freeman had A-frames erected to hoist up the engine, to do it at high and low tides and special times. And in the 1920s, it became a rum runner. The diesel engine gave it speed to escape the authorities. Next in the mural is the Maggie Bell, and it represents those fine shipbuilding and seagoing tradition of Mahone Bay. It was a 99-ton brigantine built by John Henry Zwicker in 1903, and it carried salt fish packed tight in barrels down to Puerto Rico and Trinidad. And it came back, of course, with rum and molasses and sugar and specialist lumber. So started the great heritage of boat building in Mahone Bay. Mahone Bay did have its railway age, and the mural shows Mahone Junction. Thousands of people came in and out of Mahone Bay, businessmen, tradesmen, salesmen, workers, tourists. And if you wanted to go down to New York or to Boston, you took the train from Mahone Junction, headed for Yarmouth, and then caught the steamer. Over the years, Mahone Bay had 3 locations, only 1 railway station, but was moved around. By the 1970s, the age is gone, but the age of railways is commemorated in the mural. Mahone Bay was for many years a target place for fishermen and for hunters. Salmon could be caught in the Mushamash. There were flows of fish at certain times of year through the bay. There was caribou to be caught at one time, and even at one time the moose. And in Mahone Bay you can still find old moose horns made of birch bark for calling the moose. Mahone Bay was known, people came from the States, and this was used as a base to head for the woods or to go fishing. But always in the background, of course, was boat building. And you can see in the mural the construction of small launches, huge mighty ocean-going ships. The iconic schooners and the sails are there. And remember, it was the Mahone Bay crew that stepped the masts and fitted the sails of the original Bluenose, and that was Tom Freeman and his Mahone Bayers. And you can see in the background fish being dried on racks at the shipyard. And look carefully for the red roof of the old exhibition building. It was built in the 1880s for the town fathers to show off the prosperity of the town. And people started coming to the rural exhibitions. They were the first Lunenburg County exhibitions. And after the town was formed as a council in 1919, unfortunately, it was one of the first buildings that had to be pulled down. It had been let go. So look for those buildings and the boat sheds that are along the shoreline. Looming across the bay comes a rum runner. And in the 1920s, it was the age of rum running, of stories and legends and jokes and tricks that were played by the rum runners. And the mural commemorates that age. Remember, rum running was tolerated by the authorities. There was a time of unemployment. The Great Depression was just around the corner. But it split families. It split the young Arthur Ernst, the first mayor in 1919, disagreed with his brothers about rum running, and he split and went to the States, and his two brothers carried on the trade. But it did bring prosperity to some hard living families. And you'll notice the artist has built the rum runner near the vent, and this commemorates the jokes, tricks the rum runners used to play. They could create smoke to think that the boat was breaking down, and they also used smoke in fog to help escapes. So the great age of rum runners is there as well. And then there is a burst of colour, and the mural pays tribute to the iconic three churches. It is the stamp of Mahone Bay, and it has actually become a national stamp put on by the post office, and there's a nice golden light around surrounding the colours of the three iconic churches. But let's not forget the first inhabitants of Mahone Bay. It was the Mi'kmaq who found Mahone Bay a treasure for 1,000 years before the European settlers arrived. And the artist has caught a beautiful, evocative scene of a Mi'kmaq settlement. And we know the Mi'kmaq lived in and around Mahone Bay. It was a sheltered harbour, there was fresh water, fish and game teemed here. There's a wonderful reproduction of a Mi'kmaq canoe. A family is settled around the wigwam. And just over the wigwam, we see a picture of a famous craftsperson who really stands in this mural and represents all the craftspeople and artists who have flocked to Mahone Bay and helped Mahone Bay famous. She was Marie Christiane Paul. She married a Morris, and her quill work for a baby's cradle is famous and is in the Bridgewater Museum, and it's a famous example of quill work. She knew Mahone Bay well. She visited Mahone Bay. It was made for friends in Mahone Bay. So she began a whole tradition of artists. And next to the wigwam, there's a deer standing carefully, listening, ears pricked up. And deer can be found. And in the tree, two eagles. In the mural, everywhere, there are animals, flowers, they're observers, they're listeners. Tail aloft, a chipmunk follows the band. A white cat also struts to the music. A Canada goose shows off its young. An owl watches unblinking. A blue jay soars through the trees. Geese flock in the air. Ducks paddle. Two turtles emerge to sit in the sun. A sea otter surfaces. An osprey dives and has caught its prey and is rising. Two eagles keep guard. And everywhere in the mural, bright lupins bloom everywhere. And finally, when you turn the corner, There is Jacob Ernst, one of the grand old men of shipbuilding in Mahone Bay. He was the founder of the Ernst shipbuilding empire. It survived a historic storm that swept away his first wharf, and he and his family ran it for 150 years, right to the last boom years of the Second World War. He was right in the middle of the great tradition of great boat builders. The McLeans, the Zwickers, the Langels, the Schneiers, the Burgoyne brothers, and the Hams. He stands there with his great Victorian beard, surveying the heritage of the past, and he's heralding the bright future of Mahone Bay.